Hello there. My name is Sebastian Straub, and I'm a Senior AWS Solutions Architect here at N2WS. N2WS Backup and Recovery utilizes the native AWS Snapshot technology to perform backups of your data and workloads. These snapshots are incredibly fast and efficient. The only downside here is that snapshots are kind of pricey. EBS snapshots are, in fact, stored by default in Amazon S3. But in a separate AWS infrastructure, that is not a user visible bucket. So don't go looking for your snapshots in your S3 buckets. To make matters worse, even though these snapshots are technically stored in S3, Amazon will charge you EBS prices for it. If your data is located in North Virginia, backing up 1 gigabyte in EBS snapshots will cost you $0.05 per month. So the question arises, do all my backups have to be stored in the expensive EBS type storage called snapshots? Some data I might just be keeping for compliance reasons, so why not archive it into a much cheaper storage tier? That's where the true visible S3 buckets come into play. Today I will be showing you how to configure S3 buckets for use in N2WS and how to configure the archiving policies. Let's get started. Here I have my N2WS console. As you can see, I've been performing backups for a while now. The very first thing we want to configure is the automated built-in backup policy, which will ensure that N2WS backs up its own configuration. That is necessary, so we will always be able to retrieve the N2WS console in order to perform the data recovery from our S3 archive buckets. I already have a schedule which kicks in every day at midnight. And this I'm using to perform my regular workload backups. Now I want to add a schedule which kicks in after all my backups have been performed to then perform a backup of my backup solution with the most up-to-date data. So I'm going to click on New Schedule, and I'm going to name that daily_0100. And I'm going to make it kick in at 1 o'clock in the morning. All right, and I'm going to click on Apply. Now we'll create a policy. This is a special policy. It actually already exists. We just have to make it visible. And the name of the policy is CPM data, all lowercase, one word. And you might already have that policy. If so, feel free to skip this step. So I'm going to choose generations to save. In my case, I'm going to keep 7, and I'm going to associate that with my new schedule. I'm going to click on Apply. There we go. Now we have that policy available as well. As you can see, this policy is different because I don't have to configure it. It's already pre-made, and N2WS already knows, sure, you want me to back up myself. Of course, I could define a disaster recovery region if I wanted to. Now that we have this policy, N2WS will allow us to define the S3 repository. First, we'll create a bucket in S3. So I'm going to switch to my S3 management console. I'm going to click on Create Bucket and choose my bucket name. S3 is a universal namespace, meaning each S3 bucket you create must have a unique name that is not being used by anyone else in the world. This is because your bucket name makes up part of your S3 URL, which must be unique. And just keep in mind, all of that has to be lowercase. I'm going to call this n2ws-s3-demo-archive. Usually you want to make sure that you create the bucket in the same region where the data is originating from. Of course, this is completely up to you. Then I'm going to click on Next. The next thing you want to do is you want to turn on encryption. So that's my default encryption right here. I'm going to click on Next again. And here we can block all public access, which is exactly what we want because we don't want to be the next big data breach headline. And then I'm going to click on next again. And this is just a quick review of all of our choices, and we'll create the bucket here at the bottom. Beautiful. All right, so let's go back to our N2WS console. So we're almost there. Let's choose S3 repositories. I'm going to create a new S3 repository. This name is just a friendly name. It can be anything you'd like it to be. It doesn't have to be the bucket name. So I'm going to call this one s3archive. That's my account, and that's the region where we created the bucket. And now we'll browse the bucket names, and here it is. And then we'll click on Create. So now we have an S3 repository available within N2WS. So we're almost there now. So let's go back to our policies now. So we're going to switch to policies, and here we have the copy to S3 button. So if I select this, we need to turn on S3 archiving. We need to choose our repository. And then we can choose, well, how often do we want to produce an archive? In my case, I want to create a weekly archive. So I'm going to choose copy every 7 backups because my schedule is a daily backup. And down here, you have the option to retain the archives based on 2 criteria. One is generation retention, and the other is time retention. My brain usually works best with time, so I'm going to turn off the generation retention and turn on time, and I want to retain the data in S3 for 6 months. So that's what I'm going to choose here. So let's take a look at the advanced options now. I have different S3 storage classes to choose from. The first one is standard S3, which costs $0.023 per gigabyte per month, which means our storage cost will be cut in half. You'll probably remember at the beginning of the video we discussed that snapshots are stored at $0.05 per gigabyte per month. But we have more options here as well. We can also choose infrequent access and intelligent tiering. S3 infrequent access storage clocks in at $0.125 per gigabyte per month. That is half of the cost of regular S3 and a quarter of the price of snapshot backups. However, infrequent access does come with a 30-day commitment. Even if I were to delete my archive after, let's say, 10 days, I would still have to pay the full 30 days. S3 intelligent tiering clocks in at the same price as infrequent access and with the same 30-day commitment, but it is less rigid than infrequent access. S3 intelligent tiering monitors access patterns and moves objects that have not been accessed for 30 consecutive days to the infrequent access tier. This is ideal for data with unknown or changing access patterns. However, there is a small monitoring and automation fee to be paid to AWS. On the bright side, though, there are no retrieval fees in S3 intelligent tiering. And if an object in the infrequent access tier is accessed later, it is automatically moved back to the frequent access tier, and no additional tiering fees apply when objects are moved between access tiers within the S3 intelligent tiering storage class. So I already know that I want to keep my data for at least 6 months. So in my case, I'm going to choose infrequent access because I do know that I probably won't need to access this data anytime soon. So I'm going to click on Apply now. To keep the N2WS instance very lean, the actual archiving of the data isn't being performed by the N2WS console. We spin up a temporary S3 archiving worker instance, which will do the heavy lifting. And this instance needs to be able to communicate with the N2WS instance, and it also needs to have access to the AWS endpoints. So let's create a configuration for that real quick. It's done on the main page under Home, and all the way at the bottom of the page, Configure Workers. I'm going to click on New Worker Configuration. That's the account. Now I'm going to choose the region that I'm archiving from, which is North Virginia. I can choose a key to use. Then I need to choose the VPC. In my case, I'm going to use the default VPC. I also need to choose a security group. I'm going with the default here, and then I can choose a subnet as well. And in my case, I'm going with East 1F. Then all you have to do is click on Apply, and that created the worker configuration now. All right, so now we have everything in place to start archiving. So let's try this now. We can actually kick it off, or we could wait till the schedule kicks in tonight, but I'm impatient. I want to try this right away. So I'm going to do run ASAP, and that will kick off my backup policy right away. I'm going to click on Backup Monitor, I'm going to refresh that, and there we go. Our backup is now in progress. All right, so my backup is already done, and now my S3 copy status is initializing. Now keep in mind, the very first archive that you're going to produce is going to take a little longer than every subsequent backup and archive, because the archiving works just like our backup. The very first backup, the very first archive, that's a full backup or archive, and then every subsequent process is going to be an incremental. Good. And now we have a progress bar that's going to start moving here. And I can actually refresh this as well. And there we go. The progress is going up. And now we're almost there, 90%, 93%, 100%, and now it's just wrapping up. And completed successfully. Great. So now I actually have an archive of that data also in S3. Which then means if I want to recover the data, I'm going to click on Recover. Now I can also recover the data from my S3 repository. So if I select this, now this is a really nice feature because I can recover the data into any target region. It doesn't have to be North Virginia. I can actually recover into any of the regions. Now, if I choose to recover the data into a different region, then I probably also want to use the VPC cloning feature, which then allows me to actually get my entire infrastructure, the networking settings, into that target region. So that's how the S3 archiving works. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.